trust you, that's what I trust. So my sense, I want to go back to something. I asked you to define love, and I'm going to define it on my terms now. Please. And that is the best in me serving the best in you. And I think that's the deepest pleasure. That's the deepest and most lasting pleasure. And it is the most fundamental motivation. It's the inexhaustible source. Because if I can do that, whenever I do that, I feel that I'm being properly. Well, and there's nothing better than that. And
you can extend that to the world, to situations, places.
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to do by accepting the proposition that God is love. I mean, it's God is love and God is logos. Those are both there. So then the question, to some degree, is the rank order of the two. And I would say God is truth within love. And that's the animating spirit of mankind. And that's a way different claim than the one the atheists are going after, by the way. Yeah. Think about it, everyone. Is truth in the service of love not the best animating spirit of mankind when it isn't pursuing an aberration? We can all ask ourselves that question.
I think that's a good question to ask.
Thank you, John.
No, what I mean is I think it reorients us to the
We can put that on a T-shirt. Is truth in the service of love a good question?
I guess I see them as more. I see them as more interpenetrating. I want to make a stronger relationship between them than just a relationship of service. I mean, this is
how about her, man?
Yeah, this is why I like the term realization, that love is a way of affording realization. And the deepest knowing we have of reality is in realization. That's what if I had to put it into a word.
So it seems to me, so I'll make an appendage to my claim.
Right.
The reality that is most justifiable is brought about by the action of truth in the service of love.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is I see truth. I think you're using it, and I've heard you use true as something beyond a correspondence between the semantic content of a proposition reality. I've heard you talk about right, and we even use that when we use the phrase.
Yes,
true
it seems to incorporate some of those other dimensions that you've been talking about.
Exactly.
Okay, well, great, man. So fill me in.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at that power is a way of, when your shot is true. Your skill has been effective, and you're going to hit the mark, right? But presence is also a way in which things are true to form, right? And then the participatory knowing is when we're like the deepest sense of true, which is related to trust and being betrothed to the world in an important way. So if you will allow me to expand what you mean by true to cover all of those dimensions.
Betrothed to the world in that you extend the same courtesy to the world that you described extending to your partner.
Exactly. I think the answer to nihilism isn't some propositional answer. This is what I get from Nishitani.
Yeah, right.
It's to relearn, and I mean this deeply, like in the Buddhist sense of sati, to remember what it is to fall in love with reality, to fall in love with being. And if that's what you're saying is the
now, do you think that's what Sam Harris is striving for in his spirituality? Well, and it's not a throwaway answer. It's like, what's he up to exactly? I mean, isn't he on a Sophia, a Sophia adventure?
I think everybody is, how can I put this? Everybody lives from the non-propositional kinds of knowing emphasized by Plato. And that's what all of the scholastic research is pointing to now, that Socrates was trying to point people to the non-propositional knowing, the procedural, the perspectival, the participatory. I think we all have to live from that, given a lot of things I've said and a lot of things we've said.
Well, maybe you could expound on those a bit more for us and clarify a bit more. And so you said the answer to nihilism, that isn't exactly a comment on my comment that the culture war is about the claim that the drive to power is at the core of Western being.
I think that's an equally nihilistic claim. That's my point. The claim
The claim is nihilistic, or my claim about that is nihilistic,
the claim
or both?
that power is a fundamental reality is an attempt to assuage the wounding of nihilism, but it is fundamentally mistaken in its endeavor. It is constituted the wrong way. It's like framing a problem the wrong way, so that you do not get the insight needed to get to the solution of the problem. So I think of it as a fundamental misframing. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay,
and that's why I'm hesitant to say either yes or no to it, because
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, I believe that it is misframed, because I don't think it would be taking us in such a pathological direction, the whole argument, if it wasn't misframed.
And so part of what I'm trying to, and for me, this dovetails with the increasing crescendo within 4E cognitive science about embodiment and embedded and extended and enacted cognition is most
you see this as a subset argument of one of those elements.
Yes.
But I mean, that's a huge, but like I said, I'm really having a hard time. I know what you mean, and I suppose what you're trying to do with everything you do is to expound upon this, but I certainly want you to expound upon this. Let's go into those three modes of alternate cognition a little bit more deeply.
Okay, so the first distinction, of course, was classically made by Ryle, and we even carry it in psychology when we make distinctions of our own procedural memory and things like that, which this is the distinction between propositional, knowing that something is the case, in which what you're trying to do is basically assert the truth of the semantic content of a proposition.
Right, and that's akin to the proposition that to believe in God is to accept a set of propositions about the nature of God. Yes, and that's what always strikes. That's why I never answer that question, because I think that's the wrong framing of the question, so I can't answer it.
Exactly.
Okay, well, man, you're helping me out here. So because you're helping me differentiate my sense of the non-propositional space. And I mean, I know some of this because I know that the knowing what and knowing how circuitry is separate.
Yep.
I've known that since I wrote Maps of Meaning. And I know the insight circuitry is separate. And that's what I've been getting at also with regards to this idea of revelation and then critical thinking, which we started all this with and never got back to, even though it's just a trivial issue.
We're following the logos. We're following the logos in love.
God, I hope so. I hope so, John, because it's certainly the only justification for my existence, Red Skull and all.
I think there are many reasons that justify your existence, my friend.
Yeah, well.
I think that's an inadequate self-appraisal. But
thank you, John. That's vastly appreciated.
So I think you would admit, and I think there's been a growing consensus from the failure of computational cognition or even behaviorist we can't reduce consciousness.
Why failure, John?
Because what we've noticed is that consciousness doesn't seem to be something that's explicatable in terms of the logical relations between propositions.
It's not propositional.
Right,
very good. Very good. So you think we've actually found that out, eh? And that's the failure. Does that mean the failure of AI as it's presently constituted?
It depends, because what's happening in AI is the AI is moving off a sort of
propositions.
The idea that cognition is computation and that the mind is a formal system is being replaced with the idea that the mind is an embodied autopoietic dynamical system, and that thinking isn't in the head. It's the way the embodied brain is dynamically coupled to the world in an ongoing evolution of your sensory motor, right?
You mean hence the justification for freedom of speech, you might say.
Well, and also the
freedom of action.
Freedom of action, and also, a freedom for people to explore different ways in which they inhabit their body. I think that's also an important thing. So I did want to get back though. So if there's a growing plausibility, so much so that, for example, Bernardo Castro, and I take him seriously. I don't agree with him, but Bernardo is a sharp guy. He proposes a kind of absolute idealism.
Who is that? I don't know him.
Bernardo Castro. So Bernardo is so convinced, and he's a very sharp guy, that the arguments of trying to reduce consciousness computationally, et cetera, have failed, that he is willing to advocate for, and I don't agree with him on this, but he makes a plausible case that reality, absolute idealism, that consciousness is the ultimate reality. And whether or not that's the case I'm making a weaker claim on the basis of that. I'm taking that as evidence that there is a growing consensus that the attempt to, explain consciousness computationally, or even just in terms of sort of behaviorist set of skills or something like that, I think that's failed. So to go back to the four kinds of knowing, you've already acknowledged the propositional.
Yeah. So sorry, I want to inject one more thing here that's
yes.
relevant to what you just said, if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all.
Well, I think the atheist critique of religion is a critique at a propositional level.
I've made this similar point, Jordan. I've made the point that they're not paying attention to. I mean, when Nietzsche runs into the marketplace, he is talking to the atheists when he says, "You don't know what you've done when you've killed God." Right. And so to think that religion is primarily about asserting propositions for which there is no evidence is to miss all of the non-proposition. So I make a distinction, and it lines up with this. I think that religion is not primarily about knowledge. I think it's primarily about wisdom, because wisdom is about that fundamental.
It's about embodying it.
Pardon me?
It's about embodying it. It's about establishing a relationship with it.
It's
about worshiping it.
It's about taking it into your identity.
That's the worship, I think.
I think
Jonathan described worship as celebration. So it's a celebration of and reverence. Well, reverence for sure, but the celebration part is interesting, because what you celebrate is what you hold in highest esteem, and to hold something in highest esteem is to pursue it in the hopes of embodying it. And that's worship.
We've maybe this is to your point about worship. We've lost the depth of celebration. We have reduced. Yeah,
you see it in black gospel music, don't you? And then it runs into rock and roll from there. And then you get stadiums full of people experiencing it without noticing what they're doing. Well, I mean, I felt that spirit when I went to a Leonard Cohen show, when he stood up and everyone clapped, and he sings Hallelujah, or is it The Apocalypse? I think that's the song. He's got a couple. Him and Johnny Cash in his later years got a couple of songs that put you in that space right away.
But and I agree. I think that is a version of celebration, but the problem with that is it's been too located in its ontological locus is entertainment.
Yes, you're right. Exactly, John. Entertainment. It's like, no, it's enthusiasm.
Yes, and theos, to be possessed by the god. And that's what I was trying to get at, right? In celebration.
We don't even notice when it happens. That's what a stadium is too, when you cheer when someone puts the soccer goal through the net.
Of course it is. And
hey, look at that man's aim. Yeah. Couldn't we all aim like that? And wouldn't that be wonderful? Yes, and we'll do the wave to that. And don't we notice that we're worshiping God? No, because we've killed our religion by presuming it was a set of axiomatic set of presuppositions and listening to the 19th century rationalist atheists.
Well, what we've done is we have confused modernity's understanding of religion with the phenomena, which is, I think, a fundamental mistake.
No, with our blind critique of the phenomenon, because first of all, we have to make the phenomenon trivial and then critique it without noticing things like the spirit in black gospel music.
I think
taking that seriously.
Yeah. I like your reformulation. I think that's better said.
Thank you.
So to go back, if consciousness and this kind, so there's a knowing that is dependent on your state of consciousness. There's a knowing through consciousness, and that's what I call perspectival knowing. What consciousness does is it foregrounds some things, backgrounds others, makes things things salient. So it's doing, if you'll allow me a term I've coined, it's doing salience landscaping for you. And what that does is
is that drawing things to your attention?
Yes, drawing things.
But your attention always also does that. So is that part of that? Because you kind of choose where your attention goes.
You choose it,
but sort of, right? Or you follow
participate in it. You participate participate in attention. That's what I was saying. You don't just attend and you don't just receive. You participate. There's both, and they use these metaphors without, I think, fully unpacking them. There's the top down and bottom up.
Do you think is that participatory attention akin to the dance between revelation and criticism? So is it revelation and dialogical evaluation that constitutes the participatory element of attention?
Yeah. Well, I think what it's doing is I'll speak more the theological language. It's realizing. So there's attention, right, is doing something like prioritization, relevance realization, right, in the dialogue between imagination, where we stop thinking of imagination as just images, useless images in our head. I want to use it the way Corbin uses it, imaginal. And this is what's coming out in Friston's predictive processing. Imagination it permeates your perception. It's permeating your. It's right to say that I'm as much.
That's why Jung said we live to dream.
Well, but the thing, there's something true about that. But I want to caveat it, because people will say it's all an hallucination. No. It's not.
No, it's not.
Most of the predictions.
But that's weird. Yeah.
Most of the predictions
are accurate.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
So it can't be just a dream.
Exactly. So you've got imagination, if you'll allow me the spatial language, coming down and out. And
that's right. And it covers what's out there. And we see the imagination, but it pertains to the reality.
Yes, there has to be remember we talked about.
So what we're doing is continually adjusting the imagination to the reality.
That's the dialogos. And the prioritization is the way of adjusting.
So we see the map, we don't see the territory, but we also see is that right? We see the map, we don't see the territory, but we also see the errors in the map.
Right.
We see the map and the errors in the map, but we don't see the territory.
Yeah, but
the errors are where the territory pushes its nose through.
And what those errors do is they can, if we're properly receptive to the way the errors are deforming the map, they can turn it into a globe, and a globe is still not the thing, but it's damn better than a map. And so that there's a receptivity that's also important. I mean, it is definitely the case that insofar as our map is accurate, which means it's been generated as a consequence of a rectification of our previous errors, is that it is an adequate representation of the external of reality. It's an adequate representation of reality, which means we have molded ourselves to reality. See, this is also why I think, John, that I think that men and women select each other for manifestation of the logos. Wow.
I mean, because I said this was a deep critique,
Yeah, keep going.
It goes all the way to so look at this. So men